2. Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. I have put the purple rope lights away. I've got the magma lamp still out, and it's hovering above, and I haven't shaved in a month. The Ravens are eliminated, which, around these parts here in the land of pleasant living in Baltimore, we would say, it's time for them O's, hon. And this guy and I have been knowing each other for, about 3 decades or thereabouts, when he was one of the premier baseball writers in America at USA Baseball and Baseball Weekly, and he's written books on all sorts of cool things and has just redone his audiobook on actually hockey. I didn't even know he did anything on hockey. I think of him as a baseball guy. He is a leukemia warrior who is a Johns Hopkins professor, which is going to be my next gig once I graduate from this sports media thing. Tim Wendel back on, our defending champion. And dude, I love you, right? And I love having you on. And maybe 3, 4, 5 times a year we try to get together and have one of these little chats on the pod and all that. And I booked you on because, I just wanted to move past the Ravens losing, and I'm thinking, who have I not had on? What have I not talked about? Something's got to be going on with baseball, right? That we'll talk about it a little bit this week with a couple of my buddies. I call Maury Brown, and then Neil Peart dies, right? And then the Astros thing happens. I called you and said, hey, you want to come on next week? Yeah, sure, I'll come on. And between then and now, the Astros and the Red Sox and dogs and cats and, Major League Baseball has a little Black Sox scandal, doesn't it?
This is out of control, Nestor. And we wake up this morning to Pete Rose suddenly being the voice of reason, saying, how come none of the players have gotten, punished to this? And I'm just like, what? Pete Rose has become the oracle on high. This is how whacked out this has become.
Are we just at the point? Honestly, how old are you? Because I don't want to date you too much, but I think we're of a similar age, but a little different. How old are you?
I will be turning, believe it or not, 64 in about 2.5 weeks.
That's crazy, because I do think of you as an older brother, but I didn't realize. So you're 13 years older than me. So you were born in.
I'm like the old uncle of you. Yeah, I'm a little bit older than you.
You're younger than Springsteen, but older than me. So you were born 55, like that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, the whole Eisenhower thing and the Truman thing and the post-war thing and the boomer, okay boomer thing and all that. So this is interesting, right? From a pop culture standpoint, this is interesting. You were sort of born in the late 60s where baseball players were really sort of idolized, and Mickey Mantle and, Brooks Robinson, and that's what America, everything was clean cut and integration had begun, and baseball was always going to be sort of this safe space, and we didn't talk about Jackie Robinson all that much, I don't think. Certainly not back then. It was a little, we don't talk about that. We just let Willie and Hank play a little bit, even though they're dealing with inner hell that they're not allowed to talk about. And Frank Robinson till they get older. So I think it's fascinating in the modern era that any child, right, that any 12-year-old boy right now living in Lutherville who loves the 100-loss Orioles and pines away for the great days of Manny Machado would look at this and say, Mr. Wendel, Professor Wendel, tell me about the history of baseball. And you would begin with cheating, lying, Ty Cobb, horrible racism, horrible treatment of players and not letting players move, horrible Lords of the Realm, give them Lords of the Realm. And then in the modern era, it's, they cleaned all that up, right, Dad? No. They stuck needles in themselves for 15 years everywhere, and everybody lied about it, and guys blew up like beach balls and hit 75 home runs, and we don't let them into the Hall of Fame. Well, there's certainly, Dad, there had to have been some honor. Well, no, Pete Rose, the guy had 4,200 hits and had millions of dollars, was a tie on a hill and betting and gambling on or against his own team. And then in the modern era, we had managers not just stealing signs, but setting up full customized strategic video to cheat, and they win World Series. Are we just at the point where it's just a filthy game? Where integrity just... It's like college basketball. We just shouldn't expect it.
Well, I'm afraid you're right. And you go back to the times of Ty Cobb and et cetera. You kind of wonder how much integrity's ever been in the game. What I find amazing, and somehow baseball always gets trampled by this, and maybe other sports don't do as much, but it's almost they can't keep up with the times, especially if it turns in terms of technology and things like that.
Well, it's like the internet. You can't keep up with all the cheaters, right?
No,
it used to just be your mailbox and your phone was the only way your aunt was going to get scammed. And then credit cards come and they figure out a way to, to blink. You can't keep up with the criminals. I mean, and that's for Belichick. That's for Donaghy. And now they're going to put teams out in Vegas. And you drive across the Jersey line and you get action, right? I mean, it's it really...
And then we're going to be wondering why we get point shaving and things like that later on.
And the leagues want to drink in this. Bob Kraft wants to own DraftKings, right? And then own the officials that figure out what's pass interference and what's not in the NFC Championship game. It really is. I mean, look, I look at who's running the country every day, the Russian mafia, right? And I look at this and I say, the cheating, and if you're not cheating, you're not. Baseball is the ultimate, because as I pointed out, you being born in the 60s and me into the 70s, I was born in the 60s, but watch baseball. We always thought this stuff was on the up and up, right? Like, and,
At least a good chunk of it was on the up and up. And you pointed out kind of the, Soviet mafia, Russian mafia, et cetera. What I find very intriguing about the punishment, the way it's rolled out so far, is it looks like Manfred and the powers that be in baseball are hitting kind of this middle tier. Let's get rid of general managers and managers. And yet the owners are skating. Jeff Passan put up a great piece, I thought, who used to be my intern at Baseball Weekly, a great piece about how, Crane, the owner of the Astros, he hasn't said he's sorry. Other clubs are going, well, he's getting off pretty much scot-free. Then you go down like a level below, so to speak, and you have the players, and we've got Pete Rose saying, shouldn't any of the players here be called into questions and punished too? It seems like what Manfred's done is look for this kind of middle tier. It's like A.J. Hinch, it's Alex Cora, et cetera. And I'm really wondering if when he was rolling out his punishment and maybe made whatever deal he did with the owners, it was almost unspoken that, okay, as soon as this starts coming out, hey, Red Sox ownership, John Henry and et cetera, you're gonna cut loose Cora, and that's just gonna be part of the thing. I'm not gonna do it, but you're gonna do it, and I find it very bizarre the way this is rolling out so far. And Manfred's he's a very astute, on top of it guy. I first crossed paths with him during the whole labor debacle in like 93, 94, and he struck me as a very shrewd guy. And
I remember he used to stand up and do these press conferences that were the smarmiest, New Yorkiest, nastiest, lawyeriest things you've ever seen. And he's turned, I don't see any of that video popping up, but it's fascinating that the people that run the game are so slimy, just in general. And I'm not talking about the guy at the top of the building here that's gone away that we don't talk about. I had Marty Conway on earlier this week. Do you know, Tim, you can't click a button right now and buy an Orioles ticket?
Really?
Go try. The Orioles do not have their tickets on sale. Like, I don't, and they're not going to sell a lot of them, right? Like, let's start with that, but I don't know what to say.
So they're trying to drive down the market to get out of town? Is this what it's all about?
Tim, we're 21 months away from the lease being up, and there's no journalist left here to report on anything other than me. And to be honest, like, I don't want to say I'm bored with it, but we got kids killing each other 2 miles away. You're a professor in residence at Hopkins here in Baltimore. I mean, you know the reputation when you say, my card says Johns Hopkins in Baltimore when it comes to recruiting your 17-year-old daughter to come live in Baltimore. I mean, we have real issues here, and that's what I'm doing with Baltimore Positive. And, on the backside of all of that, sports is wonderful when it brings people together like the Ravens did, right? Like, I mean, we talk about the Astros and the Red Sox and championships and all of this stuff. For these owners, it's about a pat on the back, and they're all wealthy, and it's not affecting whether they're eating lobster filet mignon tonight or what yacht they're on. I certainly have been exposed to all of that going to these NFL owners meetings and seeing these baseball owners. But to your point, the baseball owners just kind of want to wash their hands of it, right? They just want to pass it down the line and sell tickets and popcorn and put the screens up and let's go play ball again in 8 weeks, right?
Sure. And I think as part of it is protecting their own, too. I mean, one of the things, Rob Manfred is very, as we said, a very sharp guy. And I think in some ways he saw what happened to Faye Vincent back in the day, and the commissioner is employed by the owners. And so therefore, I think part of it is he's going to look out for the owners as this rolls out. I'm going to be very interested. I don't think it ends with the Red Sox. I think this could percolate out for a while, which is
how
very
many guys were involved in this? I mean, seriously, Tim, like if I'm asking you as a fan and you know baseball better than I know baseball, they threw me out 15 years ago. I don't know any of these creeps. You know what I mean? To be honest with you, and quite frankly, it's been 15 years spent doing other things in my life than running around locker rooms at 3:00 every afternoon like I did for 15 years. You know, I've looked at it as a blessing. I mean, as I'm 51 now and I've watched my wife almost die twice and be sick as a dog this week and have to miss the game. But all of this, Camden Yards being built, having a baseball team, having Cal Ripken, talking to Marty Conway, and seeing the afterglow of the purple lights in the city and what my role in this has been for 30 years, I mean, that's what it's all about. It's about bringing black and white and old and young and trying to bring people together in some sort of common way. Sports still does that when it's right. You know, like right. Lamar Jackson did that in my town 5 days ago. And the only reason I'm talking to you right now, and you know this, I wouldn't be talking baseball right now amidst all this if we were playing the Chiefs this week, right? Like literally, this now comes back to my front door about how crooked all this stuff is. And these crooked SOBs that have taken this money for 25 years in our city, now you can't even buy a ticket for the Yankees game. And they're going to cry poor 21 months from now as they leverage us against something else to move the team so that we put a roof on the stadium, give Billy Joel a residency. I don't know. Who the hell knows what they're going to want? Blow up houses in Otterbein so they can build a bar? I don't know. I don't know what the ask would be. Certainly in Baltimore, the ask would be, give us some money and come back down to our games and stop having people get shot outside, right? Like that would be their ask, and that's going to be the way they snake their way out of here or try to, if Manfred's not tough. And part of this goes back to the toughness of the leader, right? And where Manfred's going on this and how Tony Clark's going to feel about this. But I don't know. It's sort of like the players. How can anyone have any respect for all these players when they were sticking needles in themselves and like WWE characters playing kayfabe? You know what I mean? Like I don't see any integrity in all of this, right? Like players banging trash cans to get an edge. My God, they flew to the Caribbean to get drugs and stuck them into themselves. And who knows what they were underdosing or overdosing on, you know?
Right. Well, I think what's fueling this to a certain degree, too, is the remaining integrity within the game. And what I mean by that
well, the team that cheated won. So I don't, it's like Belichick. I mean,
yeah, but what's, look at the statement the Dodgers put out. I'm pretty sure you did. But
I did.
The Dodgers,
they're pissed.
Got screwed in this thing. And I think, and in some ways we should be, I hate to say it, thanking our lucky stars, the Nationals beat the Astros, or this would be, this would be like the Black Sox all over again, potentially. And I think in some ways you asked me, how far does this extend? I don't know. But I think it extends farther than the Astros and the Red Sox, but I don't think it's pervasive through the entire game. And so therefore, teams like the Dodgers and, I don't know, maybe the Nationals, things like that maybe didn't necessarily cheat or didn't cheat to this extent. And I'm pretty sure the Dodgers didn't. Just look at the reaction coming out of SoCal on this. I think they're the ones kind of putting the screws to Manfred right now and saying, hang on, this can't be business as usual. You can't just kind of say, hey, Astro guy, fire your GM, fire your manager, everything's right. And I think what cracks me up this morning is having Pete Rose come out of the blue and somehow be part of the side that's right.
And be heard.
Just like going,
you know what? Until Jose Canseco and Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds weigh in, I'm not going to consider it a valid point. Right?
Well, it's funny you bring up Clemens and Bonds, and I don't vote anymore for the Hall of Fame. I'm out of that whole gig.
Why? Can I just ask, or no?
No, because like you, I'm not running around locker rooms at 2 a.m. anymore, and so therefore, don't have that luxury anymore to vote for the Hall of Fame. But I'm going to be real surprised when, in a sense, the totals come out, because I think both Bonds and Clemens are getting significant votes from what I'm hearing from friends of mine who still vote and those that put up their ballots on Facebook and things like that. I don't think they're going to get in this year, but in a sense, it's part of this erosion. I don't know, let's call it erosion of integrity or whatever within the game. And you can argue, hey, it's never been there.
I guess that's my point. My point is you and I collected baseball cards and believed in freaking Santa Claus, like literally, right? Like, literally, if you go back to the root of the game and growing up into free agency in the 70s, my dad canceling the Sporting News in 81 because of the baseball strike, right? Like all of, the special juice that the Pittsburgh Pirates, as well as the white powder that Dale Bearer was involved in, so like those were the scandals of that era, but everyone was honored and everyone was Roberto Clemente, in my mind, right? And then the story unfolds about Mickey Mantle's life and about, what was real and what was kayfabe. And but more than that, the business of the game and Lords of the Realm. I mean, come on, man. I found that stuff when I was a kid, as one of your understudies in 1991-92, when my life, my business was put in jeopardy in the summer of 1994 by a baseball strike that threatened the only thing we had here, which was baseball in Camden Yards, and what I was doing to feed my 10-year-old son at the time. So, I'm well studied on this, and I don't know that I'm shocked or not shocked. I guess more than anything, whatever the punishment is, and I tweeted this the other day, the punishment never fits the crime. The crime is always worth doing in the end because these guys get rings, they get money, they get houses, they get the life, they get all of that stuff. So taking the needle, there are so many players living in million-dollar mansions, or maybe they squandered them away, but they made millions and millions and millions of dollars. And guys like Tim Hewlett that went away because they wouldn't stick a needle in themselves. During that generation, if you didn't perform to Vince McMahon's standards, you didn't work. And it was really no different in the WWE than it was in Major League Baseball at that point. And probably John Matuzak's era would tell you the same thing about the National Football League. But as you get older and you see this stuff, but when you see parades happen because of systemic cheating, and it wasn't one guy coming in robbing the bank and nobody knew about it. Everybody was in on it. I wonder why I went to 30 ballparks in 30 days in 2015 and why I've given it so much of my life the first 50 years. And to be honest with you, I give it far less of my life now, much like you. I take it far less seriously. If anybody believes Peter Angelos was telling the truth 25 years later, they should check the track records of both of us as he's on his final legs. But all that being said, I'm worried about my franchise. You know what I mean? Anybody that would say these people have integrity, and John Angelo stood and answered my question at a Civic press conference 3 months ago that the team would be here as long as Francis Scott Key and whatever the hell he said. I don't believe a word any of these people say because of stuff like this.
I agree, and it's really unfortunate. And what I'm going to be watching, maybe more than anything, is, in a sense, we got a new season, on the horizon, as we've been talking about. We've got two franchises here without managers, which I find a little interesting, just before, what are we, a month out before spring training camp opens. What are the numbers going to be in the stands? And I'm not just talking Baltimore, I'm talking across the country. And in a sense, how much of a black eye is this going to be for the general populace when it comes to baseball? Or
well, how about this, Tim? I mean, Lunau's out of work. Who was his right-hand guy for, 15 years?
Oh, that was
Elias in Mydell.
Yeah, right.
Right? And I haven't heard a word from those cats, right? Like, if I worked for Lunau and I was innocent, I would be out in front saying, hey, there's none of that here. None of that comes to Baltimore. I didn't know anything about that stuff. And here's my phone. Here's my email. I wasn't in on any of that. I'm running the Orioles, and I'll see you in Sarasota in 3 weeks. I'm not hearing I'm not hearing Boy Wonder here at Camden Yards saying that either. And it's not like there's any real media around for me to text Elias and say, dude, if you had nothing to do with any of this, because to your point, the leaves are starting to fall off the trees. I mean, the Boston Red Sox manager got canned. I mean, who's next? Well, anybody associated with any of them, right? Well, I could roll the shades down behind my purple magma lamp here, and Camden Yards is right behind me. I mean, and they're going to lose 100 games. And they're at the end of the lease. I mean, this is not good for the Baltimore Orioles. It's not good for Major League Baseball. It's not good for my city. And I'm kind of, I'm going Howard Beale lately, Tim. I'm sort of mad as hell, but I don't know what to do about it with the baseball thing other than report the truth, which I've tried to do all along. And, I mean, we have a real sticky situation in Baltimore as to how this thing ever climbs the mountain and becomes what the promise of Camden Yards was supposed to be 30 years ago for our city.
Yeah, exactly. And well, you tell me, what's in a sense the Orioles draw hardly anybody? What's the sense of Oriole fan up there right now? In a sense, have they just kind of washed their hands of this? Or are they still somewhat upbeat?
I think every Oriole fan was caught up in Lamar fever, right? Like, we didn't.
Right. And so
I don't think anybody's given the Orioles a thought. I mean, honestly, like, I haven't given the Orioles a thought. And when I talked to Marty Conway about it this week, I thought it fascinating. I mean, you're a Hopkins professor. You're in and out of the city. They've been, like, non-existent for it. It looks like they want to leave town. You know what I mean? It reminds me of what the creeps at Pimlico have done. They've killed the Preakness on purpose. They've destroyed the Preakness to try to say how bad it is. And I don't know, man. I mean, their off-season, they signed Jose Iglesias for $3 million. I mean, that's not a punchline. That's what their offseason has been. And now they have two guys that are directly involved in the Astros tree, and I don't hear a mumble. I don't hear anybody facing forward, front of house, and saying to Oriole fans, our leadership had nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. And there's a press conference at noon, and Nestor, you sit in the front row and ask the questions. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see anybody doing that here. Their tickets aren't on sale. And now, you know what, Tim? They're pissed that I'm talking about them. You know what I mean? Because I haven't said a word about them in 2.5 months because they canceled their winter carnival. They canceled their fan fest.
Yeah, I found myself thinking of that. It was just last weekend. The Nats had their fan fest and was big. Well, you knew.
Yeah, I heard that was kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of a big deal because they are the reigning world champions.
Here, come touch our trophy.
Yeah, that's right. And the amount of people they paraded in there. I mean, you got Doolittle and Scherzer, and it just goes on and on. So it's I don't know. It's interesting, and again, Manfred's approach has been very specific, and it's kind of looking at that very kind of middle tier. And I'm going to be intrigued if that continues. And I wonder if the whole Pete Rose thing that's coming out today lights any type of fire on, getting any players kind of punished. I'm kind of wondering, that you talk about press conferences and such. The first one Carlos Beltran has, next one with the Mets is going to be very interesting, I think, because you're just like going, hang on, this guy was one of the ringleaders of this, and now he's a manager. So it's curious. And
well, at the face of it, you've done this a long time. Where are you on sign stealing? I mean, you've written a dozen books about baseball. You covered this for 30 years. I didn't spend a whole lot of time in these basements talking to these guys about what was in the jars of whatever milkshake Scott Erickson and Brady Anderson were drinking, right? Like, I mean, literally, I was of that era where they were all lying, drugging every day, throwing at each other's heads. Albert Bell's got Jason Grimsley climbing through, roofs to steal bats. I mean, right? So they're all fighting, pissing in a jar because they're all cheating, and then they're all breaking federal law and refusing to a drug test and using their union. I mean, we've seen this. I mean, this is not unusual that the crime and the cover-up. The cover-up's way more important than the crime because they just keep covering it up, right?
The rule of Watergate. The cover-up's always worse than the crime. I don't know. I find that. Sign stealing, I guess I'm fine with, but I think, again, where baseball got in big trouble, and I'm amazed that they can't think far enough ahead that you can kind of say, oh, okay, sign stealing's fine, from Ty Cobb thing, and I'm on second base. And
just
I'm
don't use a video
and,
camera.
That's right. But suddenly, and they're in a sense the ones that almost put video cameras in the dugout because you're suddenly going, oh, okay, well now we're going to go to replay and we're going to allow a challenge and all this type of stuff. Well, of course, you're going to have monitors in there, and the next logical step is, oh, I'm not going to be looking at that to see if I'm going to challenge that call at first base so we don't have another Don Denkinger call or something like that, which is like, low-hanging fruit. Oh, let's start dialing in there and see what's going on and what the signals are for, a curveball and the fastball, et cetera. The thing that cracks me up about this, Nestor, is that they ended up, we've got all this technology. We've got like these, video things like pretty much right in the, walkways to the dugouts, et cetera. Everybody's looking down, do we challenge this or whatever? But then what's the execution? It's banging on a garbage can?
Oh, I'm thinking if you want to troll them every time the Houston Astros come to town, play Knock 3 times on the ceiling if you want me. Twice on the pipes.
Or play some of the music from Rent or something like that, or anything that involves garbage cans. It's just, I just amazed. And, and this is coming on, soon after the whole Apple Watch thing with the Red Sox. You're just going, who's minding the store? Because obviously things are run amok here big time.
I don't think Sig Mejdal and Mike Elias would ever be involved in any sort of chicanery. I don't know, dude. I'm worried about the whole. I'm worried about the whole thing. I mean, I really am. I mean, I've watched baseball devalue itself in a lacrosse market. I've just watched football resurrect itself here in our city. And now, sadly, it is baseball season. And the first 2 days of baseball season are death to the Astros, death to the Red Sox. And, oh, by the way, the guys running our 100-loss operation here have been pimped as the Astro Way and Astro Ball and everything the Astros represented. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, just think, too, how
they got a lot of explaining to do.
A lot of explaining to do. And just think how spring training is going to open. And as both of us who covered a lot of spring trainings, that it was almost idyllic. You'd kind of show up and, some pitchers would be here. Let's talk with them. And, hopes for the future. I've been working on this curveball or whatever it may be. I don't know. I've got a new weapon in my arsenal and my pitching arsenal. All the questions of the first week are going to be Astros, Red Sox, sign stealing, video cheating, etc. Who else is involved? It's just going to be crazy. So I don't know. It maybe kind of fits the weather. The weather's already spring, and I'm like going, this is crazy.
Tim Wendel's here. He writes books and does things and is a professor and writes books about leukemia and like real world stuff, but worked in the toy department of baseball and sports writing for many, many years at USA Today and USA Baseball Weekly. How did I not know that you did a book on hockey, right? So this is going to be my roundabout way of telling a funny story. So I see Al Michaels a bunch, right? Like over the last 25 years, and I'll see him a bunch next year because the Ravens will be playing Sunday Night Football because of Lamar Jackson, right? Like, I've been very fortunate. The Ravens have been good. I go to all the games home and away. I have been in the men's room with Al Michaels I'm not kidding you, maybe a dozen different stadiums, okay? And the reason for this is when there's a timeout with 3 minutes left to go in the second quarter, I run to the bathroom, and his cubicle where he broadcasts from is 50 feet away from me, and we wind up in the same bathroom. And literally, this has happened over 25 years a bunch, and I don't know, I laugh about it, and I don't think I've ever told this story, but sometimes I'm in there, and I'm in the bathroom, and I just want to say, he's got his earpiece in, he's running literally to get back on the air, and he has to go to the bathroom in the middle of Sunday Night Football, or Monday Night Football in the old days, and I almost want to say, do you believe in miracles? I just want to make him laugh, you know what I mean? And he's always been so nice to me, and like all that, and I think I've had him on the show back when I was syndicated a million years ago after OJ and all that nonsense back in the 90s. But when I think of, do you believe in miracles, I think of Al Michaels, and I just want to tell a funny Al Michaels story. But you wrote a book on do you believe in miracles and the team and all that good stuff. You've now committed this, I guess, in the modern era. Hey, Tim, read your own book. I did this for my last book on the Peter Principles. It's a lot more demanding than you think to read your own book out loud.
Yeah, it's exhausting. This is the third one I've done now. I did Cancer Crossing. here's a funny story. The first book I ever read of mine was Cancer Crossings, and we did it, the last two, down to the last pitch and now going for the gold. I've done the production, all that stuff. But Cancer Crossings, that was with Blackstone, and they said, okay, we did it in a studio in D.C., and we did it over 3 nights, and it was a minimum of 75, 80 pages a night. I felt like I was doing a rock album, and my voice sounded like Rod Stewart after, doing a North American tour by the end of that thing. But the funny thing was they ended up, we're done. We've made it. We somehow did this book, which,
How long did it take you to do it?
3 nights. And
did you do them consecutively?
Yes.
Oh, that's a mistake. Look,
it was a huge mistake. I was making mistakes all over the place.
You know how I found this out? I mean, I used to read like my column. I called it the opposite of the sun was the moon. So I had a column that I did 15 years ago, and we would play Sting's "Walking on the Moon." So my old school fans remember that. But last summer, I wanted a little time off, and I had written the Peter Principles. And
great book.
Thank you. And I decided I just didn't want to talk to people in July when the Orioles were losing 100 games. Literally a year and a half ago. I just said, you know what? I want a week off, and I just don't feel like calling. I just, I need a little time down, And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go in and read the first chapter of this and see if I have a voice for it. If it's going to be fun for me, how much I stumble over myself and have to stop the tape and edit and do all that. And the good news is I'm really good at it because my father read to me when I was a boy, and I'm better at it than, let's say, the orange guy reading off the prompter that he doesn't even believe the words he's reading. I'm good at it, but it's really, really hard to do. And I did a page or two, and I went out and said to my wife, man, I'm going to be drinking a lot of water. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And not coffee, not just straight water, and it was a really, really challenging thing to do. And I thought, well, I'll just give 3 hours to it tonight and do you can't do 3 hours. You can only do 45 minutes, and then you got to kind of
and then things get very ragged.
And I think
and then that would wipe me out with Cancer Crossing, with the cancer book. Nestor, is we finish it, and the guys are saying, well, you get a call in a couple weeks, and this is I'm doing with a full-fledged production guy. You'll get called for pickups. I didn't even know what pickups we're talking about. I thought we were going out and cruising bars or something. I don't know. And
sounds fun.
So I go back in, and they still aren't quite telling me what I need to do. And I go in the little booth, and there's the pages, and I'm going, well, this must be what we need to fix or do again. And I start flipping through the pages, and in yellow highlight were so many, and unfortunately you know a lot of these terms, a lot of the meds and the procedures for cancer folks, and I had mispronounced so many of them.
Wow.
Methotrexate, donomycin, Cytoxin. I still wake up in the middle of the night saying those because, donomycin I had to say about 60 times, and they would play the sentence and then just go, can you get the right, inflection there, and just we'll drop it in. So, Cytoxin. And so it was just kind of crazy. And I must admit, getting out of that, I was going, all right, what do I have the remaining rights for? And some of them I've already sold, but, several were baseball books. One was the first book I ever did, Going for the Gold. I was 24, 23. Wow. And the thing is, I go way back with those cats because...
Well, you're a hockey fan, right?
Yeah, I grew up near the Canadian border, but my way into that story, and with Herb Brooks and those guys, was I had covered my very first assignment, pretty much out of still in college, was the 1979 NCAA hockey championships at the old Olympia in Detroit, and Minnesota won, and they were coached by Herb Brooks.
Who was on that team? Christian on that team?
No, Christian was with North Dakota, but
I know there were Boston kids and Minnesota kids, right, from the movie, right? So,
but most of them, 8 of them, were from that team, and so that became,
you've known these kids all your life, right?
I still get holiday cards from some of them. Phil Vercoda, Eric Strobel. Eric Strobel just retired.
I love those names. By the way, I found my Jim Craig autograph.
Really?
No,
wow,
Jim Craig. This is true. I've gathered all of my autographs because I'm afraid that they're going to burn up. I mean, I'm talking like David Bowie, Robert Plant, Springsteen, stuff that I have that would have real value. And I found, apparently Jim Craig's autograph has real value. He autographed liner notes at a Hershey Bears game for me in 1988. He was just sitting in the press box, and I had the game notes, and I'm like, "Hey, Mr. Craig, I'm a big fan. So you signed it, So, so I found that last week. So there you go. So there's
What are you going to do with all these? You're going to
I'm going to get them. My dear friend Robbie's first base has implored me to get them verified. So I'm going, because they're all obviously. I had dinner with David Bowie. You know what I mean? And I had dinner with Robert Plant. I actually had lunch with Robert Plant. But so all this cool stuff that I've accumulated.
We're all going back in my life here, because I'm going to date myself again. My very first rock concert, I think I was 14 years old.
Zeppelin?
Was Led Zeppelin.
Oh, you were spoiled. You only go downhill
it's
from
been
there.
all downhill since then.
Absolutely, man. Hey, man, I love you, man. We got to get some lunch or some dinner or something before the world burns down and before they wreck baseball and they take my baseball team away or screw it up even. I don't know could they screw it up anymore? I'm being honest with you. Could it be any more screwed up? Okay.
No, I'm still looking. I'm looking at these quotes from Pete Rose, and Pete Rose is making more sense than the commissioner. And you can tell I'm bamboozled by this morning. I woke up to this, and I'm just going, what? And Pete Rose, I don't. Yeah, I nowhere to go but up. I think we're touching bottom, but I don't know if we're going to go up.
Man, be well. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Thanks.
Going for the gold. Tim Wendel has read it out loud. Do you believe in miracles? Oh, man, that's good stuff. I don't even know he wrote that book. All I know about's baseball stuff that he does. So make sure you're checking out Tim Wendel. He's also written a book at Cancer Crossings about leukemia. He's an awesome dude, and that was a long segment, and I need to towel off. The baseball thing has gotten me all fired up. Cheating in baseball. Who would have thunk? Nasty at WNST.net finds me. The buy a Toyota.com audio vault there 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. I'm licking my purple wounds. I put the purple lights away. I've got my picture art Modell out. I'm going to keep it out for 52 weeks because I think we're going back to Tampa to win the Super Bowl next year because that's just what I want to believe right now. And it's baseball season and it's depressing. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.